What is the percentage of CO2 in the atmosphere?
0.04.
The point is the public just don't know. They do not know. They think that CO2 is a bad thing and there's a lot of it around. Well, actually, it's a good thing and there's hardly any of it around. What we have is equivalent to 1¼ inches on the top of Nelson's column if Nelson's column represented all the atmosphere. That is the whole of the CO2, and man's contribution to that is 1 millimetre. So a piece of bird shit on the top of Nelson's column is man's contribution to the content, fractional content of CO2 in the atmosphere. Now, termites produce 10 times as much CO2 as does man. So if CO2 is a problem, we should have war on termites. It's bonkers to claim that man's CO2 is key when this is going on. In fact, 96% of the CO2 flux in and out of the biosphere is nothing to do with man. So, and I put this to Greenpeace people, I say, oh, well, it's the straw that broke the camel's back, isn't it? Well, okay, but how come the ants didn't break the camel's back then? Their whole theory is CO2 causes global warming, that causes climate change. They stopped talking about global warming because there isn't any, so then they've got somehow a magic jump from CO2 to climate change without the warming in between, which is nonsense again. It's a chain without a link. This is our view of what actually happens. Solar activity drives loads of things way up there, here. Then that changes the jet stream, that causes circulation patterns, which in the end causes CO2 levels. CO2 is the gas of life, not death. We do not have CO2 causing this, and that is not causing the jet stream, and that is not causing the magnetosphere thing, and that you driving your car does not cause a solar flare. The same thing, well, if you look at lots and lots of long data going back 500 million years, this one is carbon dioxide and the blue one is temperature. So there's not a correlation. They both go all over the place. But just worth noting, we're now at a very low level of carbon dioxide. In fact, we're at a dangerously low level of carbon dioxide, and if you halved it now, some plants would have difficulty surviving. The truth is that carbon dioxide levels are beyond the control of man anyway, and furthermore the levels themselves do not have any impact, I repeat, any impact on climate. But just to get the levels straight, I've got a little diagram here. The fact is, and all sides will agree this, that there is 50 times more carbon dioxide in the sea than there is in the air. Okay, now that means, and there's going to be a level between them, and the level, the balance level between the two of them is the saturation level of CO2 in the air will depend on the temperature of the sea. You warm up the sea a bit, like warm up a glass of water, some gases will come off, nitrogen, oxygen, carbon dioxide will come off. You cool down a glass of water and it can absorb more of those gases. That's very straightforward, very simple and very basic physics. Because there's 50 times more CO2 in the sea than in the air, it means basically whatever man does to the air will have no effect because the CO2 will compensate. If man puts extra CO2 into the air, or nature, or termites, or anybody puts CO2 into the air, it will just go into the sea, depending on the sea's temperature. And if you take it out of the air, then it will come out of the sea. And the levels will stay the same according to what's called Henry's law, gives you the equilibrium levels of a liquid and a gas at a certain temperature. So the CO2 theory is wrong from the start. Even if you believe the CO2 is having an impact, the CO2 levels can't change under man's influence. The fact is, the sun rules the sea temperature and the sea temperature rules the climate.
But where does this tie into the mini ice age, Piers?
Well, it ties into the mini ice age because what we have actually happening now is the start of the mini ice age. I mean, in a way, if you like, it began around 2013, but it's a slow start, and now the rate of moving into the mini ice age is accelerating. The basic thing is you have a wild jet stream, but in the immediate sense, if you look at recent weather, we've had this winter and spring, we've had extreme cold, we've had record snow levels, 100-year records have been broken in America, all over Europe, all over the Northern Hemisphere, including China. And the Baltic Sea ice is reached very high levels. World ice levels are now very high, both in the Antarctic and on Greenland. Now, of course, the BBC tells you about a bit of warming or milding which has happened in the Arctic sea ice and so forth. However, these things are part of what we expect under the wild jet stream view of the mini ice age, which is something we've been saying since 2008. Now, under that, the jet stream, which under the global warming model is going to be way up to the north, under the mini ice age view of things, when the solar activity goes down, the jet stream gets more wavy and moves further south. Okay, well, this is the globe, the world. And this is the jet stream, which is west to east motion in the upper air of winds. And when you've got a low pressure coming towards the British Isles, for example, the jet stream is essentially like that, and that's the low pressure coming in. Now, under normal circumstances in spring, say, the jet stream will be above the British Isles, for example. So it's mostly warm, and it'll go up and down, of course. And under normal views of the world under carbon dioxide, when it gets warmer, the jet stream will go further north on average, because the colder area is then reduced and the warmer area below the jet stream is bigger, right? However, what we've got happening now is not that. The jet stream has not shifted north. What's happened is the average position of the jet stream is a long way south, and it's furthermore got very wavy. When it's longer, it can get more wavy, but under low solar activity it gets extra waviness. So what we have is a wild jet stream giving extreme rapid changes quite often, which is the wrong type of extremes for the man-made climate change story. This spring we've had the jet stream, generally speaking, so far much too far south for the global warming story, while we've had these cold spells. Under the global warming story it should be further north. That is not happening, and as I said, what we're seeing are the wrong type of extremes for the global warming story. We have confirmation of the mini ice age view of jet stream motion. This was produced by a man called Timo Neroma some years ago. He's since died, but what he did, he compared the average smoothed out solar activity in the last few hundred years with the average smoothed out solar activity 10 magnetic cycles of the sun before that, i.e. 221 years before that. And you see an amazing correlation. I mean, this is a smoothed out correlation. It's not day to day or even year to year, but 3 or 4 years by 3 or 4 years that it would show this type of thing. And we are at the knee of this curve now. So if you accept that this correlation is valid and will carry on, then it means we are plunging now deep into a mini ice age, and there is no way out. So for the next 20 years, until 2035, it's going to get colder and colder on average, and there will be even more wild jet stream and more wild temperature changes, and it will be generally colder. And the specific sort of things we can expect are more hail events, and we predicted all these things in 2008, and they're all happening now. There will even be more earthquakes and extreme volcano events, because historically those do coincide with periods of low solar activity, and that will happen. There will be more snow in winters, lousy summers, late springs, and short autumns. And the economics of this will be more and more crop failures in Europe, and farmers having to shift into different things. The basic message is that the sun is controlling the climate primarily via the sea, and the best thing to do now is to tell your politicians to stop believing nonsense and to stop doing silly measures like bird-killing machines of wind farms in order to save the planet, they say, but get rid of all those things which cost money and reduce electricity prices now. Thank you. Exciting bit. Some of the politics of it all. In 2004, I was invited to the Global Oil Summit by people involved in the climate change con. Okay, now I didn't know why the hell they wanted me there, frankly, but okay. I gave this talk at the Global Oil Summit, and I walked in, I thought, there's not many people here. It was at half the size of this room. I thought, what's this Global Oil Summit? Then I realised who the hell was there. There was the head of Iraqi oil was there, Vladimir Putin's chief advisor, Andrei Leonov, was there, and all these kind of top shots. I gave this talk, showed what's going on, and they all applauded, and Putin's advisor said, Mr. Corbyn, I want you to sit beside me at lunch. I said, that's great, good idea. Now I'm walking along, and this guy rushes up to me and said, Mr. Corbyn, I just want to show you something. And he flicked through this heap of paper. I said, and there was graphs in there of solar activity, temperatures, stuff I was doing already. I said, what you got me here for if you know it already? He said, we just wanted to check from a real scientist what's going on. I said, okay, that's fine. I said, and who are you? He said, well, I'm retiring this meeting, but I'm the chief executive of ExxonMobil. So Rex Tillerson must have been there and probably got elected that day as a matter of interest. But anyway, fine. So 3 months later, some friends of mine said, please, why don't you ask those bastards for some money? I said, yeah, okay, let's ask them for some money. And we also said we'd ask the other side, like the UN, for equal amounts of money, so we, whatever. Anyway, they were asked, and they said, no, we don't want to upset the Green lobby. Huh? But they just agreed with us that it was all nonsense. We do not want to upset the Green lobby. That was their words. Now, the point is, they discovered, or it's obvious, they wanted to know, one, what's true, two, what makes money. And they're different things. Okay, so that's what happened then in 2004. Now, later on, I was invited along with Richard Lindzen and others to Moscow to talk about whether or not they should sign the Kyoto Protocol. The Russian Academy of Sciences hosted it, blah, 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 and they agreed, and the British Met Office were there, and they were very upset. They agreed that man-made climate change is nonsense, and Russia will not sign the Kyoto Protocol. Fantastic. 2 months after that, I turned on the television, and there's Vladimir Putin signing the Kyoto Protocol. So I phoned up my friends in Russia. I said, look, the Russian Academy of Sciences has spoken. Surely that's the answer. He said, Mr. Corbyn, however they say it in Russian. He said, Beslan. I said, what do you mean, Beslan? He said, Beslan. That's all I can say, I've got to go. And he went. What was that about? Look, Beslan was that place in Chechnya, or in Russia, where the Chechen rebels had invaded a school and the Russian security forces piled in and killed loads of people. Well, what's that got to do with man-made climate change? Well, the answer came a couple of months after that. The Russians were in Chechnya killing. And the West did nothing. They said nothing at all. So Putin had said, okay, international diplomacy, you move a chess piece around and you keep somebody happy and do a deal. And that's all that was going on.
Am I the reason you get stoned every week now? Build up integrity, got you texting, emailing me, wanting me to feel with you. Baby, just face reality, move on. Sometimes it's hard to face reality.